The planet of Aurelia 9 was dying.
We must keep
The wind
moving.
howled through the empty
The
valleys,
storm is coming.
carrying dust and snow made of silver ice once. This world had shining oceans and bright skies, but now everything was frozen under endless night. The sun had not risen for years, and the people who once lived there were gone, all except a few who refused to give up. In the ruins of a broken city, a weak light flickered, inside a small shelter made of metal scraps. Sarah, an alien mother, sat near her child, Lyra. The child's skin was pale blue, her tiny chest rising and falling slowly. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter, trying to share her body heat. But the cold bit through her skin like knives. Her kind, the Virelians, could survive the cold for some time, but not forever. They needed warmth. Warmth that no longer existed on this dying planet. Sarah whispered softly, "Hold on, my child. The stars will bring us light again." But her voice trembled, because she no longer believed her own words. The fuel cells were empty, the fire crystal had died, and the food pack was frozen solid outside. The storm screamed like a living thing. Lyra whimpered, "Mama, I'm cold." Those 3 words cut deeper than any blade. Sarah pressed her forehead to the child's and whispered, "I know, my little star, I know." For hours she sat still, rocking her child in silence. Every breath felt heavier, every second longer than the last. She thought about her husband, gone since the first wave of the galactic war. She thought about the humans, the ones everyone blamed for the chaos. The story said humans were dangerous, cruel, heartless beings who only cared about power. She had seen their war machines in the sky long ago, raining fire, and she had promised herself she would never go near one of them. But now, with her child dying in her arms, promises no longer mattered. The mother's heart was stronger than fear. Far in the distance, a sound broke through the storm, a low hum. Deep and steady. Sarah froze. It was not thunder. It was something mechanical. A ship, maybe Mo, or something worse, through the cracks in her shelter. She saw a light in the sky, slowly descending through the frozen clouds, a strange blue flame, cutting through the dark like hope itself. Her pulse quickened. She crawled to the broken window and peered outside. The light grew brighter. A ship, metal and alive with sound, landing in the snow-covered wasteland. Its surface bore strange markings, a circle with 2 stars, and inside it, letters she could barely read, UHS Dauntless. A human ship. Sarah's first thought was to hide. Her body trembled with fear and anger. If humans were here, it could only mean danger. But when she turned back to her child, she stopped breathing. Lyra's small hands had turned gray, her lips pale. The child's chest rose once, then fell weakly. "No, no, no," Sarah whispered, shaking her. "Lyra, wake up. Please wake up." But the child didn't move. Her body was getting colder by the second. Sarah looked toward the human ship, tears freezing on her cheeks. She had no more strength to fight the cold or the fear. Maybe humans were monsters, but maybe, just maybe, monsters could save her child. Her heart screamed louder than her fear. She stood up, clutching her daughter close to her chest. The storm tore at her cloak, the snow cutting her face, but she didn't stop. Each step toward the light felt heavier, but she kept going. She stumbled, fell, and crawled again, her child's head resting against her shoulder. The ship's ramp opened, bright light spilling across the ice. Human figures appeared, tall, covered in metal suits, voices echoing through helmets. "Captain, movement detected," one of them shouted, their weapons raised, red beams scanning the snow. Sarah collapsed a few meters away, too weak to lift her head. She raised her trembling hand and whispered, "Help. Please, my child." The humans hesitated. The scanners identified her as non-human, maybe even hostile. One of them stepped forward, his voice firm. "Stay down." But before he could finish, the man beside him, Dr. Elias Ward, ran ahead. He knelt beside the alien mother and looked at the child. Her body was ice cold, her pulse fading. He shouted to his crew, "Get a medkit. Now!" Sarah's vision blurred. She heard their voices like echoes underwater. She saw the human's face, his eyes full of something she had never seen before. Not hatred, not fear, but kindness, warmth, and in that moment, before darkness took her, she whispered her final prayer. "Please, save her, even if you must hate me." Then everything went silent, as the storm swallowed their voices and the stars disappeared behind the clouds. When Sarah opened her eyes, everything was white. The air smelled clean, sharp, and full of strange sounds. Machines humming, soft beeps and voices in the distance. Her body felt light, almost floating, and warmth covered her like a blanket for the first time in years. For a moment she thought she was dreaming, but then she turned her head and saw her child Lyra lay on a bed beside her, connected to glowing wires and tiny blinking lights. A mask covered her mouth, and her chest was moving, slow but steady. The sound of the machines was like music, a rhythm of life. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her little one was breathing again. The door slid open with a soft hiss. A man stepped inside, tall, wearing a gray coat with a silver patch that said UHS Dauntless, Medical Corps. He looked tired but kind, his eyes gentle. He smiled slightly and said, "You're safe now." Sarah sat up, confused and weak. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her voice cracked like broken glass. "I'm Dr. Elias Ward," he said, placing a small device near Lyra's bed. "And that's your daughter, right? She's stable now, but she was almost gone when we found you." Sarah didn't understand his words completely, but she heard the tone, calm, honest, human. She looked at him with fear and gratitude mixed together. Humans were supposed to be cold, but this one's eyes held warmth. Why did you help us?" she asked. Elias paused. As if he didn't know the answer himself, finally he said softly, "Because you asked for help." He turned to check the monitors again, speaking more to himself than to her. She was freezing. Body temperature below survival limit. "I had to use hybrid nanocytes. I didn't even know they'd work on your species." Sarah didn't understand all his words, but she understood one thing. He had saved her child. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and pure. She whispered, "Thank you, human." Outside the medical room, a few voices were raised. "Doctor, this is against the regulation," shouted a woman's voice. "We can't take in alien life forms. The Galactic Command banned contact with them after the war." Elias opened the door halfway and said firmly, "She's not a threat. She's a mother with a child." The other crew member, Lieutenant Mason, frowned. "Orders are clear. You're putting us all at risk. We're supposed to scan for survivors, not bring them aboard." Elias stared at him with quiet fire in his eyes. "If I hadn't done it, that child would be dead right now." Mace muttered something under his breath and walked away. The door closing behind him with a cold hiss, Sarah heard part of the argument. She could tell that not everyone wanted her here. Her hands trembled, not from the cold anymore, but from fear of being thrown out again. She looked at her child's face. Peaceful. Alive. Whatever happened, this human had given her a miracle. Elias came back to her side, holding a cup of warm liquid. "Drink this," he said gently. "It's nutrient broth. It'll help your body recover." Sarah took it carefully, sniffed it, and then drank. The taste was strange, almost metallic, but warmth spread through her chest. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like ice inside. "Where am I?" she asked. "You're aboard the United Human ship Dauntless," he said. "We were scanning the Aurelian sector for survivors. Didn't expect to find anyone alive there." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes full of both confusion and wonder. She looked around the room, bright walls, soft light, and gentle machines that seemed to breathe with life. Humans had built all this, and yet they were said to have no heart. When Elias turned away to write something on his console, Sarah whispered to herself, "Maybe the stars lied about humans." Hours passed, and the child began to stir. Lyra opened her small eyes, blinking at the bright lights. "Mama?" she whispered. Sarah rushed to her side, holding her tiny hand. "I'm here, my little star." "I'm here," Elias smiled quietly from behind. "She's strong, stronger than anyone I've seen in years." Sarah looked at him, her eyes soft. "She is strong because someone helped her." Elias looked away, almost shy. He wasn't used to being called kind. But outside the medical room, the tension was growing. The captain had received a message from Galactic Command. It was clear and cold. Any unauthorized contact with alien life forms will be punished under Article 7 of the Stellar Law. The ship had to report its actions soon. Elias didn't know what he would say. He only knew one thing. He couldn't let them die again. As he stood by the window, watching the stars drift past, his thoughts grew heavy. What if kindness was the real crime in this galaxy? He didn't care. He looked back at the mother and child, alien, fragile, and alive, and in his heart something old and human began to wake again, hope. Days passed slowly aboard the UHS Dauntless. The storm outside the ship was gone, but inside, another kind of storm was quietly building. Dr. Elias Ward spent most of his time in the medical bay, checking the alien child's vitals and recording her strange, glowing pulse. The child, Lyra, was recovering faster than anyone expected. Her skin color had changed from pale gray to soft blue, and her tiny eyes began to open wider every day. But while the child healed, her mother, Sarah, could not rest. She sat quietly in a corner, never removing her eyes from the humans who moved around them. Every sound, every click, every metallic hiss made her flinch. She didn't trust them yet, not completely. Humans had taken everything from her world before, and kindness felt like a trick she couldn't believe in. Elias noticed her silence. He would sometimes stop his work and say softly, "You don't have to be afraid here." But Sarah only nodded, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket tighter. One day when the lights dimmed for night cycle, Elias sat beside her and handed her a small glowing cube. "This is called a heat cell," he said. "It keeps you warm without fire." She stared at it like it was magic. Her people used to worship the star, and now a human was giving her one. Sarah turned the cube in her hand, feeling its warmth spread through her palms. "Your machines are alive," she said softly. Elias smiled faintly. "Not alive, just built by people who care about surviving." He looked at her for a moment, then added, "Sometimes we build things to feel less alone." Sarah didn't understand the words fully, but something in his voice made her heart ache. It was strange. This man of iron and science spoke like someone who knew pain. Outside the medbay, whispers spread through the crew. Some thought Elias had lost his mind. Others avoided the room completely. The war between humans and alien factions was still fresh. Too many had died. Too much hate still burned in memory. To them, Sarah and Lyra were ghosts of an enemy world. But Elias didn't care about old wars. He only saw a mother and a child. The captain finally called him to his office. "Dr. Ward," he said firmly, "you've done your duty, but this situation has gone too far." Elias stood tall, his face calm but cold. "She's harmless, sir. The child is recovering. We can't just throw them out into the cold again." The captain leaned forward. "You know the law. Direct contact with alien species is forbidden under Article 7. Elias clenched his fists. "The law doesn't forbid saving a life," the captain sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. Humanity can't afford another scandal." But Elias didn't move. He simply said, "Maybe humanity can't afford to lose its heart." That night, Sarah woke to find Elias still working beside her daughter's bed. He was checking the machines, his tired face lit by the soft blue light. She watched him for a long time, the way he moved carefully, the way he smiled when Lyra's heart rate improved. He didn't act like a soldier or a scientist. He acted like someone who still remembered what kindness meant. When he noticed her watching, he smiled. "You should rest." Sarah tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly under the light. "Humans," she said softly, "you fight wars, but you save strangers too. Why?" Elias looked at her and thought for a moment. "Because sometimes," he said, "saving someone else is the only way to save yourself." Sarah lowered her gaze, her heart tightening in her chest. No one in her world had ever said words like that. Later, while everyone slept, Sarah walked quietly to the window of the medbay. Outside, the stars glowed like frozen sparks across the endless black. She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering in her language. "My people said the stars judge us. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they watch us to see who still has warmth left." Behind her, Lyra stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. Sarah turned, and for the first time in years she smiled. But peace on the ship was fragile. The next morning alarms sounded in the hall, red lights flashing across the ceiling. Elias rushed out, leaving Sarah behind in the command room. The captain's voice echoed sharply. Long-range sensors picked up a transmission. A galactic patrol is nearby. The crew froze. If the patrol scanned their ship and found an alien life form on board, they would all be arrested back in the medbay. Sarah heard the words through the speakers and understood enough to feel the danger. She looked down at her child, her hands trembling again. After all Elias had done, now he could lose everything because of her. She took a deep breath and whispered to her sleeping child, "If danger comes, I will not let them suffer for us." As the Dauntless drifted quietly through the dark void, two different worlds and one human, one alien, shared the same small space. And somewhere between fear and faith, between warmth and cold, a fragile bond had started to grow. A bond strong enough to challenge the laws of stars themselves. The Dauntless floated silently through the dark sea of stars. The ship's engines were dimmed, lights lowered, voices hushed. Everyone knew what it meant. A galactic patrol ship was close, and patrols never came without reason. In the medical bay, Sarah could feel the tension like static in the air. Elias stood near the console, reading data screens filled with warnings. Her child, Lyra, slept peacefully under the soft hum of the life support field. Sarah watched the doctor's face, calm on the surface, but his eyes told another story. He was worried, not for himself, but for her and her child. A voice came through the intercom. "Dr. Ward, report to the bridge immediately," Elias sighed, placed a hand on the edge of Lyra's bed and whispered, "Don't be afraid if things get loud, okay?" Sarah nodded slowly, though she didn't understand everything he said. She could sense danger in his tone, and fear began to crawl back into her chest. When he reached the bridge, the atmosphere was cold and tense. The captain stood beside the main screen, where the patrol ship's signal pulsed like a heartbeat. "Channel open," said Lieutenant Mace, his voice low. A holographic image flickered to life. The face of a stern galactic officer appeared. "Captain Wren of the Dauntless," the voice said sharply. "We've detected an unregistered energy signature on your vessel." "Identify," Captain Wren hesitated, glancing at Elias, then back at the hologram. "Our systems picked up a storm echo. No unauthorized passengers aboard," he lied smoothly. Elias said nothing, but his stomach twisted. He knew they wouldn't believe that for long. The patrol had advanced scanners that could detect even the smallest life form. And if they found Sarah and Lyra, aliens, survivors from a forbidden world, the punishment would be severe. When the patrol cut communication, the captain turned to Elias, his voice low and harsh. "They're running a deep scan. We can't hide them for long." Elias clenched his jaw. "Then we need to protect them, not hand them over." Wren's eyes burned with anger. "You think your kindness matters more than the law? Do you realize what you're risking? If command finds out, they'll strip us of rank, maybe even destroy this ship." Elias didn't look away. His voice was calm but firm. "I became a doctor to save lives, not to count which ones are legal." The room went silent. Even Mace, who had been against the aliens from the start, looked uneasy. Meanwhile, in the med bay, Sarah listened to the faint sounds of voices echoing through the ship. She didn't understand the language fully, but she caught fragments: law, danger, arrest. Her heart ached. She realized the humans were in trouble because of her. She looked down at her sleeping child and brushed her tiny cheek. "My little star," she whispered. "We can't let them suffer for us." When Elias returned, she was already packing a small metal case with her few belongings: a broken crystal pendant, a piece of fabric from her home, and the heat cube he had given her. "What are you doing?" Elias asked, alarmed. Sarah looked up, tears in her eyes. "You saved us once. Now I must save you." Elias stepped closer, shaking his head. "No, you step outside now, you die. The patrol will shoot first and ask later." "But if I stay," she said softly, "you lose everything." Her words struck him like a blade. He wanted to argue, but for a moment he had no answer. He just stood there staring at the alien mother, fragile but fierce, ready to sacrifice herself for people who weren't even her kind. "I didn't save you because it was safe," he finally said. "I did it because it was right." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. A pulse wave from the patrol's scanner hit the hull. An alarm blared. "They're boarding." Someone shouted through the comms. Elias's mind raced. He looked at Sarah, then grabbed her hand. "Follow me. Don't stop for anything." He led her and Lyra through the maintenance corridor, lights flashing red around them. The hum of the patrol ship's engines grew louder. They were docking. Sarah carried her child close, whispering in her own language, a prayer for silence. Elias opened a hidden panel and guided them into a small storage bay. "Stay here. Don't make a sound," he said, his voice trembling now. Sarah caught his wrist before he could leave. "If they find us, they will hurt you." Elias smiled faintly. "They can't hurt what's already been given to hope." The door closed, and darkness surrounded her again. She held her child tightly, her heart pounding in rhythm with the thrum of engines. Outside, she could hear boots on metal floors. Human voices shouting, scanners buzzing, and above all of it, she thought she heard Elias's voice. Firm, unbroken, we have nothing illegal aboard. Just survivors of the storm. The law of the stars was clear. No mercy for those who broke it. But mercy had already taken root in the heart of one human. And sometimes, even in the vast cold of space, that was enough to change everything. The sound of boots echoed through the corridors of the Dauntless. The Galactic Patrol had docked, and their soldiers moved like shadows of authority. Their scanners flashed green across the walls, searching for any trace of alien life. The crew stood silent, pretending everything was normal. But everyone knew. One wrong move, one wrong sound, and it was over. In the storage bay, Sarah held her child close, her back pressed against the cold metal wall. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound she dared to breathe with. Lyra stirred in her arms, whispering weakly, "Mama." Light, too bright. Sarah kissed her forehead gently, whispering, "Shh, little star, stay quiet." Her heart pounded so hard she feared the soldiers could hear it. Outside the bay, Dr. Elias Ward stood on the command deck, facing the patrol commander, a tall man in black armor, his voice cold as iron. "We received a report of unauthorized life signs aboard your ship," the commander said. "Prepare for full inspection." Captain Wren nodded stiffly. "You're welcome to scan." "We're clean." Elias stayed silent, his face calm, but inside he was burning. If they found Sarah and her child, they would take them, and probably him too. 2 patrol officers entered the medical bay. Scanning every corner, their devices hummed softly. "Detecting every molecule of foreign DNA, sir," one of them said. "We're picking up faint non-human energy signatures near the lower decks." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Elias's pulse raced. That was the maintenance level. Exactly where Sarah was hiding. He had only seconds to act. "Captain," Elias said quickly, "the lower decks are unstable and radiation pockets. No one should go down there without clearance." The commander turned toward him. "We don't need clearance to enforce galactic law." Elias stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you send men down now, you'll contaminate them. Let me purge the systems first." The commander frowned. Suspicious, but finally said, "You have 2 minutes." Elias walked away, his heart thundering in his chest. 2 minutes to save them, he ran down the corridor, ignoring the stares of his crew. The walls seemed to close in as he descended into the maintenance level. Dark, humming with power. When he reached the hidden bay, Sarah was already standing, eyes wide with fear. "They are coming," she whispered. "I can feel them." Elias nodded. "Then we run." He opened a side hatch that led to an old escape corridor, narrow, dark, and rarely used. "Follow me." "Stay low," he said. Sarah carried her child tightly, the girls breathing shallow but steady. They moved through the dim light, their footsteps echoing softly behind them. The sound of scanners and heavy boots grew closer. "Sir," shouted a voice from the patrol deck. Movement detected in the lower vents. The commander's face hardened. "Seal the section!" "No one leaves that ship alive until we find them." The Dauntless's alarms blared again, red lights flashing across every surface. The ship shook as metal doors sealed automatically. Boom. Boom boom, trapping corridors one by one. Elias pulled open a service door and motioned for Sarah to crawl through. The space was tight, cold, filled with pipes and wires. Sarah hesitated, looking at him. "You will be caught if you help us," Elias smiled faintly. "If I don't help you, I'll lose something worse." She didn't ask what he meant. She could see it in his eyes. Human warmth, burning like fire in the frozen dark. They crawled through the vent, the metal echoing softly beneath them. Lyra began to cough, and weak, raspy Elias stopped, pressing his hand over a vent opening to block sound. The patrol team passed right below them, their lights sweeping the floor. One of the soldiers paused, frowning. "You hear that?" Another replied, "Probably just pressure valves." The footsteps faded. Elias exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. When they finally reached the end of the vent, it opened into a small maintenance dock, filled with repair drones and emergency pods. Elias quickly activated a control panel. "There," he said, pointing to a small pod. "It's shielded. No scanner will detect you." Sarah looked at the pod, then back at him. "You want me to hide again?" she whispered. "While you face them alone." Elias shook his head. "Not forever. Just until I can get them off the ship." She touched his arm gently, her voice soft. Why are you risking your life for me? He looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because you remind me what being human really means. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. They were seconds away. Elias closed the pod door, his eyes meeting hers through the glass. Don't move. Don't make a sound, he said. Sarah pressed her hand against the window. Elias, she whispered, may your stars protect you. He smiled, just a small, tired smile, and turned away. The patrol burst into the dock. Weapons raised. Dr. Ward. The commander barked. What are you doing down here? Elias turned slowly, keeping his face calm. Trying to stabilize the power grid, he said. Your men's scanning disrupted our systems. The commander stared at him for a long moment, then gestured to his team. Search everything. As they began their sweep, the pod remained dark and silent. Inside, Sarah held Lyra close, praying to the stars she no longer believed in. Outside, Elias stood still, ready to face whatever came. For the first time in his life, he wasn't following the law. He was following something far stronger, something that could never be written down in any rule book. Kindness, and in the cold void of space, that kindness was about to be tested. The silence in the dock was heavy. Every breath, every heartbeat felt too loud. Behind the sealed pod door, Sarah held her child close, her hands trembling as the patrol soldiers moved nearby. She could hear their metallic footsteps, their cold voices echoing off the steel walls. Scan complete. No life readings in this section, said one of them. Another replied, run it again. The human doctor is hiding something. Elias Ward stood by the control panel, pretending to fix a data line. His pulse was racing, but his face stayed calm. He could see the commander's reflection in the shiny surface of the console. Tall, armored, and full of suspicion, the commander stepped closer, his voice sharp. Doctor, you're sweating, he said coldly. Elias forced a small smile. Because your scanners are heating the circuits. You'll fry my ship before you find your ghost. The commander's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe him. He raised his hand and motioned to a soldier. Check the storage pods, he ordered. Elias froze. That was it. They were seconds away from finding Sarah and Lyra without thinking. Elias grabbed a power tool and slammed it against the wall, sparks flying. Warning! Power fluctuation! The ship's system blared. The lights flickered wildly, alarms screamed, and the soldiers turned toward the noise. What did you do? The commander shouted. Saved your lives, Elias yelled back. The reactor's unstable because of your scans. You want to die here or you want to let me fix it? The commander hesitated. He hated admitting fear, but even he knew better than to argue with a ship's chief medic and engineer. Fine, he growled. You've got 2 minutes. As they rushed out to check the core, Elias exhaled slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned to the pod and whispered, Stay hidden. Don't move until I come back. Through the small glass window, Sarah's eyes met his, filled with fear and gratitude. Then the lights went out completely, plunging the dock into quiet darkness. Up on the bridge, the captain shouted orders, trying to keep the patrol busy. Divert power to the shields. Lock down decks 2 through 5. But it wasn't enough. The patrol ship outside had begun transmitting data back to Galactic Command, and soon everyone would know what Elias had done. Elias stormed into the control center, his uniform torn and his face marked with soot. He faced the captain directly. They're not criminals, he said firmly. They're survivors. You know that. The captain's jaw tightened. Maybe so, he said. But the law doesn't care about survivors. It cares about control. Then the law is wrong, Elias snapped. The room fell silent. Every crew member stared. No one had ever spoken against command like that before. Before the captain could answer, the main screen flickered to life. A galactic officer appeared, cold, expressionless. UHS Dauntless, the voice said. You are ordered to surrender your vessel for inspection. Your compliance will determine your fate. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady but burning with emotion. This is Dr. Elias Ward of the Dauntless. We have 2 refugees aboard, a mother and her child, both nearly dead when we found them. We saved them. If that's a crime, then I accept the punishment. The bridge went silent, the captain's face went pale. Elias, what have you done? He whispered. I told the truth, Elias said quietly. The officer on the screen leaned forward, his metallic eyes unblinking. Dr. Ward, he said slowly, you have broken Article 7, direct aid to an enemy species. Do you understand the cost? Elias nodded. Yes, he said, but maybe you should ask yourself what the cost of mercy is. A murmur went through the crew. For years they had followed rules without question, watched lives die under laws that protected no one. And now, for the first time, one human dared to challenge the stars themselves, down below. Sarah could hear voices echoing through the intercom. His voice. Calm and strong, she understood only pieces. But she knew what he was doing. He was standing for her. Her hand shook as she whispered, "Why would a human defy his own kind for me?" She looked down at her sleeping daughter because, she realized, he had something her world had forgotten. Heart. Outside the Dauntless, the patrol ship powered its weapons. The sky shimmered with light as energy cannons charged. Inside, the crew waited in breathless silence. The captain turned to Elias, voice shaking. "They'll destroy us." Elias looked out the window, his reflection faintly glowing in the light of the stars. "Maybe," he said softly, "but not before they see who we really are." He opened a transmission line and broadcasted to every nearby channel. "All species, all ships in range, this is Dr. Elias Ward. The galactic law says compassion is forbidden. I say compassion is what keeps the stars alive." For a long moment no one answered, then one by one, small green signals began to blink across the screen. Ships from nearby sectors acknowledging his message. Some were human, others alien. For the first time in decades, voices from across the galaxy spoke together. "Mercy is not a crime," one captain said. "We stand with the Dauntless," another declared on the dark edge of space. A single human's act of kindness had become a spark that could light the frozen hearts of an entire galaxy. The message of Dr. Elias Ward spread faster than any law could stop, across the dark sea of space. His words echoed, "Compassion keeps the stars alive." Some called him a hero, others called him a traitor. But in that frozen silence between worlds, hearts began to change. The galactic patrol ship that had aimed its cannons at the Dauntless went quiet. Its commander stood before his screen, watching the flood of signals from ships all over the system. Alien voices, human voices, different tones, different languages, but all saying the same thing. "We stand for mercy." He lowered his weapon system slowly. For the first time in years, the cold machinery of law hesitated. On the bridge of the Dauntless, no one spoke. The crew stared at the glowing console lights that showed hundreds of green dots, ships joining them. One after another, Elias stood near the main window. His eyes wet but steady. The captain approached him quietly. "You've just started a war with the Council," he said. Elias shook his head softly. "No, Captain. I ended one." Down in the medical bay, Sarah held her daughter's hand as the lights flickered gently above them. She could hear the faint hum of the ship's systems and the distant voices from the comms. But her eyes were only on her child, breathing peacefully, her small chest rising and falling. Lyra's skin glowed faintly in the dim light. "Her health restored by human technology," Sarah whispered. "You will live, my little star, because someone believed you were worth saving." When Elias entered the room, Sarah stood slowly, her eyes were soft, her voice trembling. "You defied your own kind," she said. "For us?" Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe not for you, Sarah. Maybe for everyone who is told they don't matter." Sarah didn't understand all his words, but she felt their warmth for a long moment. They just looked at each other. Two souls from different worlds bound by one simple truth. Kindness. But the danger wasn't over yet. A message arrived from Galactic Command. Cold and final. Dr. Elias Ward is hereby suspended of duty. The Dauntless is to return for tribunal. The crew's faces fell. They had stood by him, fought beside him, and now they would lose everything. Elias read the message calmly, then turned to the crew. "They can take my title," he said softly, "but not what we did here." The captain nodded, a small smile breaking his stern face. "Then we'll go home knowing we saved 2 lives. And maybe the galaxy's soul." Days later, the Dauntless landed on a human colony world, Elysia, a planet known for peace and warmth. It was the first sunrise Sarah had seen in years. The golden light touched her skin, strange but gentle. She closed her eyes and felt something she had forgotten long ago. Hope. The colony people gathered as the ramp lowered. They whispered in awe when they saw the alien mother and child step onto the soft soil. Children ran closer, curious but unafraid. One little boy handed Lyra a small flower. Lyra stared at it for a moment, then smiled, a smile that melted every heart watching. Sarah looked at Elias standing near the ramp. "What will they do to you?" she asked quietly. Elias shrugged with a tired smile. "Maybe they'll put me on trial. Maybe they'll forget me. But they will remember what you did," she said. He laughed softly. "Then that's enough." Weeks passed. Sarah and Lyra began a new life on Elysia. The humans taught them to grow food, to read, to live under sunlight again.
Sarah often sat under the golden trees, watching her child play with human children.
Their laughter filled the air, no borders, no fear. It was something she once thought impossible. Then one day, a small shuttle landed quietly near her home. Elias stepped out, his uniform gone, replaced by a simple jacket. "They released you?" she asked, surprised. He smiled. "Not exactly. They promoted me." She tilted her head, confused. "They said the galaxy needs doctors who break the rules sometimes." They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that heals the soul. That night, the colony gathered under the stars. Sarah was asked to speak. Her voice broadcast across nearby systems. She stood before the crowd, holding her daughter's hand. Her words were slow, her accent soft but full of emotion. "I was taught to fear humans," she said. "But one human showed me that warmth is not only from suns or fire. It can live inside hearts too." The people listened in silence. "The night I met him, my world was frozen. He gave us light. And that light melted more than ice, and it melted fear." The crowd applauded quietly, and somewhere in that sea of faces, Elias looked down, smiling shyly. For him, saving one child had changed everything. For her, one act of kindness had changed the stars. As the night ended, Sarah looked up at the sky. The stars no longer seemed cold. Each one burned softly like tiny hearts beating across the galaxy. And in her thoughts she whispered, "The cold hearts of the galaxy melted not by war, but by one human's kindness."